Recently, Games Workshop have announced that the Amazon series deal is signed, and our Lord and Saviour, Henry Cavill, will be producing the next Warhammer 40,000 series, which is brilliant news, and it sounds like it's in really safe hands. They're talking about spending a year just educating Amazon in the intellectual property, making sure all of that's ironed out, and then you're looking at a couple of years of actual production. Henry Cavill, massive Warhammer 40,000 fan. The Games Workshop studio, they seem to like Warhammer 40,000 too. So it looks like it's going to be a good job. But it's years away, so we're looking at 2 to 3 years. So I want a Warhammer fix before then. What I've done to help you guys out is I've put together 10 films that are Warhammer 40,000. They're so Warhammer 40,000. Some of them may as well be official Warhammer 40,000 films. But wait, before I go on, actually, anything Amazon do won't be the first Warhammer 40,000 movie. In 2010, there was the release of Ultramarines. This movie featured an all-star cast. You had John Hurt, Sean Pertwee, Terence Stamp.
And banish it! We march for Macragge! And we shall know no fear!
And before then, in the early 90s, Games Workshop created a short film called Inquisitor. They used to show this at all the games days and Golden Demons. It was really good fun, and you could even buy it on VHS. With my list, I've got 10 truly solid choices and another 5 that work if you kind of squint a little bit. They're not as Warhammer 40,000. Now, obviously, some of these will be set in the present day, some of these will be set in the future, some of them have Space Marines, some of them don't have Space Marines. The point is, they feel like they should be Warhammer 40,000. They tick a lot of Warhammer 40,000 boxes. Quite a few of them have actually influenced the design studio in various ways, so I'll take a look at that as well. So they're in no particular order for that reason. My favourite Warhammer 40,000 film probably isn't yours. First off, I'm going to get this one out of the way, because otherwise you're going to spend the whole video wondering where it is. So the first film is Event Horizon. Directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, this film is probably the classic 40k comparison. There's no Space Marines, there's no aliens. What it does feature is very, very spiky, dark ships, religious symbolisms, and even Latin.
There. I think that says X in Ferris. Save yourself from hell.
What it does really well is it demonstrates the evil and the chaos of the warp. Essentially, it's a movie about the very first experiments with the warp, and it shows why you really, really need a Geller field to protect you when in warp space. Needless to say, it doesn't go well.
Did you really think you could destroy this ship? She's defied space and time. She's been to a place you couldn't possibly imagine. And now, it is time to go back.
I know. To hell.
You know nothing. Hell is only a word. Reality is much, much worse. Let me show you.
Let's just say, it's not directly Warhammer 40,000. This is the 25th millennium, when they're first kind of travelling through the warp and they're first discovering this, and random warp entities are attacking them. Certainly the Chaos powers here don't really seem to align with one of the big four, but they're definitely very, very nasty. And the look. The one thing I think that you can really relate to Warhammer 40,000 with this is Sam Neill, when he's messed up at the end, when he's possessed. He's got all these scars on his face. Quite a few Chaos models have that. I think the classic one is Lucius the Eternal. Just take a look at his face. It's just full of scars. You know, this once beautiful man, absolutely ruined. Aliens. First up, full disclosure, I adore Aliens. It's one of my favourite films, one of my favourite film series. I love the roleplay game. I've got models everywhere in my room. I absolutely adore it. So, I think this is a really obvious 40k comparison. It lacks a few things. It lacks the scale of Warhammer 40,000. Ultimately, the Aliens movie is 20 Marines going up against some 300 aliens. That's about it. It's not really the stuff of tabletop legends are made out of. And the Emperor is replaced by a merciless company that sends people out to, well, happily to die if it will make a profit in it. So in a way, it's got more in common with Games Workshop than it has the Emperor and Warhammer 40,000. So the Aliens Marines, they're called Space Marines in some of the novels. It's not very clear in the films, but they're colonial Marines, and they look very much like, well, not our Space Marines, but they look like Cadian Imperial Guardsmen. And the aliens are so Tyranid. I think they've had a massive influence over the Tyranid designs over the years as well. Colonial Marines have a similar setup to Space Marines. You'll see that you have the heavy weapon, you have flame units, most of the troops are armed with some sort of rifle, and then the sergeants actually carry their own unique sidearm. So Apone has a pistol, I believe, and Hicks uses a shotgun.
Got a goddamn door! Eat this!
And there's other similarities as well. So the old Hive Tyrant from the 90s looks very much like an alien queen. There's Ripperjacks in Necromunda. They look very much like facehuggers. And in fact, the Katakan Face Eater as well, which is in Rogue Trader. A creature native to Katakan. Katakan is a big death world. This is like a flannel, basically, that latches onto your face and eats away. There's definitely some facehugger vibes there. And then Ripper Swarms. Ripper Swarms are essentially chestbursters. They're snake-like creatures, you know, okay, they go around in packs, very reminiscent of chestbursters, especially the sort of queen ones with the more ridges on the back. In fact, some people have gone and made entire Tyranid xenomorph armies, which looks awesome. And then the really great news about it is you're basically putting them, spraying them black, dry brushing them silver, very easy to paint, so that's a bonus. There's also the sentry guns. The sentry guns are an auto-rated weapon the Colonial Marines use. Space Marines and some Imperial Guardsmen have the Tarantula. The Tarantula is also a tripod gun that automatically shoots the nearest enemy. One place where it's very hard to escape the alien vibe is Space Hulk. So you've got 5 Terminators going through a Space Hulk fighting Gene Stealers. Gene Stealers, again, are very, very close to aliens. Not necessarily in their look, but in the idea that they want to tear you apart as soon as look at you. So, when Space Hulk, you use blips. The Gene Stealers you can't see, but blips are moving around the Space Hulk. Very much like how the motion tracker in Aliens just reveals the blips. And then lastly, there's the iconic power loader.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Featured in the end of Aliens. This is awesome. I mean, in a way, it's like the kind of Space Marine Centurion armour. It's an exo armour. But the best likeness of this is, so Forge World, back when they were doing lots of unique conversion pieces for models, they did a conversion kit for the Plastic Sentinel. This basically added a power loader arm to the Sentinel. Now, I challenge anyone who's ever painted one of those models to not paint it yellow. Next up, we've got Soldier. So, Soldier stars Kurt Russell. He's a highly trained super soldier in this. It's directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Paul W.S. Anderson, he was the director of Event Horizon. And in fact, these were released in the same year, which is amazing because the quality gap is pretty noticeable. Whereas Event Horizon is very highly produced, Soldier isn't quite there, but it's still wonderful fun and well worth checking out. It was released 9 months before Event Horizon. So, Kurt Russell is a super soldier in this. He's been trained by the military literally from a baby. They have this brutal training regime. They're made to watch dogs, savage animals. They train with live fire ammo. At one point, a group of the kids is running along. One of them falls behind, and the military the officers just kind of drive up to him, get out, and you just hear a gunshot going off. It is brutal, but it makes him into a really tough soldier. And until, of course, some tougher soldiers come along. So, and these have been genetically enhanced. They're bigger, they're bulkier. He's made to fight them and to test himself against it. It doesn't go well for him. He's taken and he's ditched on a faraway planet, which is basically where the military dump their rubbish, which is a very, very Warhammer 40K kind of feel. You've got an entire planet that is basically a rubbish dump. So, Kurt Russell in this, essentially, he's like a stormtrooper or a Tempestus Scion, maybe a Commissariat, where they've been raised by their scholar Progenium, I think it is, and they've been trained and all they know is war. But then these Space Marines come along and they are even better, and the old models are thrown out and just discarded because they're no longer any use. Kurt Russell in the planet, they realise that he's not dead, they basically have to go back, and that means he ends up taking on these Space Marines, which leads to some really, really kind of cool action scenes. One thing that, I'm not sure if they were the influence here, but take a look at these vehicles. They are really reminiscent of the Goliaths that the Gene Stealer cults use, these giant tanks. And in the end, there's actually a doomsday device that's going to destroy the entire planet. Well, this is very reminiscent of the exterminatus the Inquisitors use. So bringing justice to the Underhive, it's Dredd.
800 million people living in the ruin of the old world. Only one thing fighting for order in the chaos. The men and women of the Hall of Justice.
Dredd is basically an Adeptus Arbites. He's sent out, along with all the judges, he's sent out to enforce the law in these giant city blocks that are basically lawless. So he's sent out, he's got the ultimate power. He is judge, jury and executioner. Very much like a Space Marine might be and Adeptus Arbites might be. Now, Dredd as well, it's very 40k, he's working for a fascist system. You know, the world has gone to shit, basically. And this fascist dictatorship rules the megacity where it's all set. Up there, he's actually enforcing a fascist state, which is very much, we know the Imperium is fascist, but there are good guys within the Imperium, and Dredd is one of those kind of good guys. Yes, he's there to enforce the law. He is ruthless, but at the same time, we know he's on the side of right. And a lot of the time, we see this with Space Marines. We see it with Adeptus Arbites, where they're in a bad situation, but they don't have to be the bad guys, and that makes it possible for us to root for them. So in this, Judge Dredd sets off with his Psyker apprentice. So again, psychic powers. They're common in 40k and in common with 2000 AD. In fact, there's loads that's in common with 2000 AD. I've got a video what Games Workshop stole from 2000 AD, which, to summarise, Games Workshop stole loads from 2000 AD, but that's pretty okay, because 2000 AD is awesome, and Games Workshop manages to make it more awesome. And you can see this, say the Adeptus Arbites armour, where the shoulder pads, there's an eagle shoulder pad, same as Judge Dredd armour. The helmet is a similar look. The mouth is free. That's a very common vibe of Adeptus Arbites, and also Space Marine Scouts, I think. Some of the weapons are the same. Although Judge Dredd usually uses a sort of pistol, and Adeptus Arbites use shotgun, both of them have the option to choose ammo. So Dredd can choose from, I think, 8 different types, including hot shot and executioner rounds. In fact, that executioner, the shotgun the Adeptus Arbites use, I believe, is an executioner shotgun. And they used to have 4 ammo types to choose from as well. There's always the feel as well. In fact, Dredd has a bike, what's it called? It's a Lawmaster is the bike. The Lawmaster is very reminiscent of Space Marine bikes as well. It's a big, chunky thing. Although, actually, in the Dredd film with Carl Urban, it's a bit kind of sexed up and a bit sleekier. So Dredd, he basically kicks ass all the way through this hive city. It's awesome.
I'm the law.
There's then a Stallone film as well from the 90s. I've got a bit of a soft spot for this, but on the whole, it's a much lighter, kind of cheerful science fiction. It doesn't have the grim, dark vibes that the 2012 Dredd movie has. Bit of a change of pace for this one. Directed by Terry Gilliam, who did a lot of work with the Monty Python crew. This is basically a Monty Python film, but Brazil. So Brazil, this film gives you a great insight into the administratum, the hopelessness of being an imperial servant. It's bleak. I mean, it is fun, but it's not the most fun one here. It's certainly not an action movie, unlike most of the other choices here. But while it would make a rubbish game, it's probably the best depiction of the Imperium. So basically what happens, the plot is the wrong person is accused of murder, and this is as a result of a fly getting caught up in a printer, and their name gets confused. Now, this is pretty familiar in Rogue Trader. One of the scenario suggestions is two armies are literally sent to fight each other because of an admin error, and in the book, 48 Hours, which is essentially about the life of an Imperial Guardsman, an entire regiment of Imperial Guard is wrongly deployed on a planet. A whole inexperienced regiment is deployed to basically a war planet, constantly fighting, and that's because of an administration error. So already we're looking at 40k here. The technology is out of date. The technology is out of date to the point of the repairmen in the air ducts actually fighting each other over who repairs an air conditioning unit. And the humour is dark and life is meaningless. So check out this clip. So you can see life is worth nothing, and when the wrong person is arrested, the house is destroyed, and the wife is given a receipt as he's taken away for him. And then, in fact, a receipt is needed for the receipt, because you've got to keep your admin up. It's a bit more obvious humour in the film, but you can imagine in 40k a unit of Adeptus Arbites raiding a house, dragging a suspect back to their fortress without any consideration for the effect it had on their family, without even checking that they've necessarily got the right person. So I only watched this film for the first time a couple of months ago. For a 40-year-old film, I think it's aged really, really well. And again, just like Dredd does with the satire, Starship Troopers does with the satire, it carries that part of 40k across really, really well. Right, we're 5 films through, so that's the halfway mark. So time for a quick plug. I just want to plug my channel. That's Toys in the Hood, which you are watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please like this video. Please tell your friends. I cover a lot of stuff, mostly Warhammer 40,000, to be honest. A lot of the earlier Warhammer 40,000 stuff I started playing in 1990. I'm sort of reliving my youth, going through Rogue Trader, the old Warhammer Compendium, things like that, and talking about them. I also enjoy like Epic Space Marine. I've been doing articles on that, and then just general roleplay game stuff as well, which isn't Warhammer 40,000, like Mort Borg, Alien roleplay game, things like that. Basically anything that excites me I like to talk about, and I am very easily excited. So if there's anything you'd like to see, hit me up in the comments. Maybe I can do a video on it. I'm always open to ideas. But thank you for getting this far, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the programme. Okay, so grab your sunscreen. I'm talking about Dune. In this one, it's 2 films for the price of 1. In 1984, David Lynch directed an adaptation of Dune, the book, and he was so disappointed with it, he actually used a pseudonym, Alan Smithy, when it was released. He was wrong. The film is wonderful. And then it got better. In 2021, we got Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1. This feels more true to the books. It's a very hard sci-fi, and he's been able to take his time filming it. We've actually got 2 parts. The second part is coming out in 2024. I cannot wait. This film, also brilliant. Now, both of these films are based on the book Dune by Frank Herbert. The book was released in 1965, so it's what? 55, it's 60 years old nearly, and it's been a huge influence on the world of Warhammer 40,000. So why? So firstly, Dune. The planet itself, where Dune gets its name, is Arrakis. Arrakis is the ultimate death world. The climate hates you, the sun beats down on you, it's hot, there's no water, and if the sun doesn't leave you food for the worms, then the worms will just help themselves. There's sword fighting. The background describes, because of the use of energy shields, basically any use of lasers, and in fact they call them lasguns, would hit the shield, basically results in a small nuclear explosion. Nobody wants that. So what they do instead is they stick it out with swords, and when you hit someone with a sword, because of the shields, the only way to penetrate the shields is with a slow knife, that just slides through the shield. Fast knives bounce off. So there's a whole dueling element to this.
You have proven you can rule yourself.
There's essentially magic powers. The Bene Gesserit Sisterhood have the voice that they can use to control people. It's not quite psychic powers, but it's near enough. The Bene Gesserit, essentially, they're the Adeptus Sororitas. You know, these are nuns in space. They're very big on more on the control side. They're less fighty, but they can fight if they need to. They know all sorts of kind of specialist martial arts. And then there's noble houses. Everything, the politics. Very big noble houses. A bit like if you were to go back and look at the High Lords of Terror, you've got the same thing. You've got the Choam, which is basically a spice conglomerate. So it's all about getting spice, which is the main drug that you need to travel through, not quite the warp, but it allows them to fold space. So there's that element. And that's given the Navigator houses a lot of power. So the Navigators are part of the Spacing Guild. And these are similar, again, to the Navigator houses in 40K. They basically control who goes where in space. If you go as far as the books, they go even further. There's shape-changing assassins. Now, the first shape-changing assassin is in Rogue Trader. They have polymorphine, a drug you inject. It allows you to shape your flesh. Obviously, now we have the Calidus assassin that basically does the same thing. And there's clones. Now, the whole of the Voltan are a race of clones. In this, one of the noble houses has the technology to clone people. And people coming back from the dead and recurring times is quite a regular plot hook. One of the huge things, of course, is there's a God Emperor. In fact, the God Emperor features a very similar level of sacrifice as our Emperor, whereas in Warhammer 40,000, the Emperor is basically sent to suffer on the Golden Throne so that humanity will survive. In one of the later books, the Leto II, who is the son of Paul Atreides, who's the main character in the first films, he becomes the Emperor, and what he does is he goes and he absorbs the worms, essentially, becomes a giant worm, and he does this so that he can keep producing the spice, and he controls the universe. But of course, at the same time, he gives up his humanity. There's loads of stuff in the books. I should probably make another video about the books altogether. There's also a couple of references to the past in a kind of nostalgic view. Paul at some point talks about the atrocities of Hitler and Genghis Khan, but then they're very much a drop of the ocean. We get a similar vibe in Warhammer 40,000. And in fact, that's something that the books do really, really well, that Warhammer 40,000 does really well. I've yet to really see in the film, and that is the scale of things. So Paul Atreides is going to launch a massive jihad, essentially like when the Emperor went to reclaim worlds from the fall of the Dark Age, at the end of the Dark Age of technology. In the process of this jihad, the jihad that uses the Fremen, who are like his elite troops. So they're kind of his space marines. They're very heavily trained. They're not genetically enhanced. And same with Sardaukar, in fact, you've got elite troops there. Again, not genetically enhanced, but these are very pure of purpose. These are people who life revolves around becoming the ultimate warrior. Very, very Space Marine-like. Now, in the jihad, hundreds of billions of lives are claimed. And later, again, the scale, billions of pilgrims will come to Arrakis just to see where it all began and to see the Emperor. Very much how people make a pilgrimage to the Golden Throne, or at least to Terra. Yeah, I mean, with the scale of things, Paul Atreides, the God Emperor of Dune, and our Emperor of the Imperium, they're kind of neck and neck for just sheer number of casualties and lives lost to their cause.
An animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape. What will you do?
Pandorum. Now this film is absolute gold and gets nowhere near the love it deserves. It's also produced by Paul W.S. Anderson, who directed Soldier and directed Event Horizon. So 3 of the films on this list are related to Paul W.S. Anderson. He must play Warhammer 40,000. Basically, the plot of this one is the Earth has gone to shit, and a big ship has been sent out to a new planet, which is about 120 or so years travel away. Our hero wakes up, no idea what's happened, has to work it out. And needless to say, he's not alone. So Imperial ships are huge, and this could easily represent maybe a loose Genestealer cult or a Chaos cult on the ship. Even just maybe the crew going mad because their Gellerfield fails. I don't want to say too much more without giving it away. Just watch this clip. I think this sums up what is 40K about it, and please go out and watch this film. It's wonderful.
I just want out of this thing!
Do you know the symptoms of Pandorum? Starts with a shiver, an itch, a slow boil. The biological side effects of flying deep space, feeding into paranoia.
Your mind has turned against itself.
Help!
Pandorum.
Mad God. This is a stop motion film. It took 25 years to make. I can't even explain it to do justice to it. Just give me a minute of your time to watch the trailer, see what you think. End up exploring the Eye of Terror, basically going into the realm of chaos. If you can imagine a space marine or a guardsman sent to explore a demon world, this is what they might see. There's a lot of, like I say, the Warhammer novels in there. Also the Slaves to Darkness books that I'm going to review later on. Those early books looked at the realms of chaos very much from a chaos point of view. The bizarre sights you'll see. I mean, that's what this film is. It's just incredible madness. And, you know, in case you just wonder if it's just kind of the ramblings there, of course the main character does very much look like a poor Death Corps of Krieg infantryman sent off to explore. Okay, so Predator is set in our time, but this could easily be the story of a squad of catechins being hunted down and picked off by some sort of alien creature. Closest equivalent to a Predator in the background, possibly a Tyranid Lictor, or there's always the stunning new Death Leaper model. Maybe you'd use that. If you've any doubt of the Predator influence on Warhammer 40K, then you can take a look at this model. This is the Catechin Colonel. It's very reminiscent of Dylan, which is Carl Weathers' character in Predator. In fact, I think even his mother would struggle to tell the difference. And it's pretty clear that Predator is an influence on the rest of the range too, with maybe a little bit of kind of Rambo seasoning. After all, Sly Marbo is essentially, well, Marbo is an anagram of Rambo. Sly Sylvester Stallone was known as Sly Stallone, so Sly Marbo, clearly a Rambo ripoff. But I digress. So, other characters for Predator that could appear in 40k. Colonel Schaefer. So Colonel Schaefer of Colonel's Last Chances. He smokes a cigar. The Governator, Schwarzenegger, he smokes a cigar as well. Now, a cigar isn't enough to say they're the same character. The build is slightly the same. But one thing I've learnt while making this video is Dutch, which is Arnie's character, his full name is Alan Dutch Schaefer. So there you go, that's where Schaefer's Last Chances have come from. They've literally taken the surname of Arnie's character from Predator. Talking of the Last Chances, there's the character Shiv as well. He looks very reminiscent of Billy in Predator, who's armed with a very large knife and obviously wears a headband. And then in Gaunt's Ghosts, there's Try Again Bragg, who single-handedly carries a heavy bolter. Very much like Blaine and Old Painless, the Gatling gun.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
Starship Troopers. This film is so Warhammer 40,000 that Games Workshop actually hired out the local cinema, the Savoy Cinema in Nottingham, to show their staff this film. And at the beginning, one of the higher-ups, John Stallard, who now founded Warlord Games, he stood up and he explained that they are about to watch a movie that's Imperial Guards versus Tyranids. Which it is. It follows 3 college friends who join the fight against the bugs. One of them joins the Imperial Navy. Sorry, the fleet they call it.
Captain Carmen Abana.
This is the captain speaking.
One of them joins the army, or we'd call it the Imperial Guard.
And Lieutenant John Rico.
Come on, you apes! You wanna live forever!
And the other one goes to military intelligence, which is basically the commissariat. There's also an element of psychic powers in there as well.
Arachnid warrior isn't too smart, but you can blow off a limb. It's still 86% combat effective. Here's a tip. Aim for the nerve stem and put it down for good.
Would you like to know more?
And then there's the bugs they fight. So, if we're looking at warrior bugs, they're basically Tyranid warriors. They're close combat Tyranid warriors. Maybe they're more like Hormagaunts. They're not much shooting from them. And then there's flying bugs. Bit like gargoyles, bit like Tyranid strikes. There's giant shooting bugs, which are essentially like a Tyranid effects. And then there's brain bugs, giant big bugs. Well, these are more like giant maggots. They don't really look like any of the Tyranid models, but the idea of a brain controlling a hive of insects is something that the Arachnids and the Tyranids have in common. But what you also get is you get the type of brain bug that goes into the back of your skull and takes over your mind. Huge part of Starship Troopers 2 and 3, that one is. And in the original Tyranid army lists, back in White Dwarf 140, I think it was, there are actually mind slaves, which are basically fighters from other armies that have been kidnapped by the Tyranids. They've had a bug put into the back of their brain, and they now fight for the Tyranids. Oh, of course, that's also an element of Star Trek The Wrath of Khan as well. It captures the satire of Warhammer 40,000 just wonderfully. I think it actually does it better than anything that Warhammer 40,000 has done, to be honest. You know, the hypocrisy of the leadership, the fascist regime they're all working for. It's very clear cut. Now, the director, Paul Verhoeven, who's directed quite a few films that have sci-fi and humour in, notably Robocop and Total Recall, which haven't quite made this list. They're not quite Warhammer 40,000, but if you like Warhammer 40,000, I would place money on you enjoying those films. Anyway, Paul Verhoeven, he grew up in Amsterdam during the occupation by the Nazis, so this is actually his anti-war movie, which is really impressive when you consider that the author of the book, he intended it to be his way of getting his political views across. Now, his political views, very, very pro-military service.
We need you all. Service guarantees citizenship.
Some aspects of Robert Heinlein's book do make it into Warhammer 40,000 and not into Starship Troopers the movie. The mobile infantry are equipped with power armour and jump packs, much more like Space Marines than Imperial Guard. The punishments they suffer are way more severe. In the movie, Rico is basically kicked out of the military for failing to protect a squad member, for asking him to remove his helmet, which results in him getting killed. In the book, he is lashed, and he is lashed for failing to check his radar during a drill. So a practice scenario, but this could have led to the death of a squad member in combat, and therefore he's punished for it. And if you really, really enjoy Warhammer 40,000, you might actually enjoy the sequels. They're both pretty awful, but the second one features a set of brain bugs, feels like a Tyranid mind slave, and the third one has a really, really cool part where the Federation discovers religion, and they also have giant battle suits. In fact, this scene from the third film feels like one of the most 40k scenes in a movie ever. So that's 10 films that I really think encapsulate Warhammer 40,000. But now I've got a bonus round, really just in case somebody turns up with 11. So there's Edge of Tomorrow is worth checking out. In that, the aliens have a sort of Tyranid vibe. The soldiers go out in exosuits. Pitch Black. You know, there's not much special to be said about the protagonists in it, but the monsters in it, oh my gosh, they really could be. There's a real Tyranid feel to them. They go around in massive kind of flocks, and it's set in the future, and it's wonderful. There's Mad Max. Now, any of the Mad Max films could either be set in the Necromundan Ash Wastes, if you like your kind of modern Warhammer 40,000, or if you look at the games in the 90s, there was Gorka Morka, which was basically the idea of was orcs getting vehicles, chasing each other down, having races, fighting. It was brilliant. It even came with a cardboard fortress. And this cardboard fortress, very reminiscent of the fort in Mad Max 2. Then there's Equilibrium. Equilibrium, these elite clerics, they're called, are sent out basically to keep an eye on the populace, to stop them reading, having artwork, to keep them under control. Real Inquisitor vibes from this film. And then there's The Void. The Void is set in modern times. It's set in a police station. But what if that police station was to become overcome by chaos? If you enjoy Event Horizon, but you just thought, oh, that's dialed back too much, I really want to just see some outrageous creatures and stuff, then I'd really recommend The Void for you. So yeah, it's 5 more. Let me know if I've missed anything. You know, there's bound to be some films that I've never seen that are real 40k vibes. Also, please like and subscribe. Tell your friends. I'll be making loads more films, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers!